Good morning. Welcome to Sunday Forum at Plymouth. We're very glad you're with us. I am Jane Cole. I'm a Plymouth member and on the Sunday Forum committee. We're really pleased this morning to have Hazel Belvo and Julie LaFon to talk about art and spirituality. Hazel has been a very influential artist, an art educator, a feminist leader, and active at Plymouth for many years. Julie is the author of the book Hazel Belvo, a Matriarch of Art. And Julie and Hazel are going to talk about how they collaborated. Julie's actually the author, but they did collaborate a lot to write the book. The book is available through Afton Press website, or you can go to your favorite bookstore and order it. And it's Hazel Belvo, a Matriarch of Art. So I am going to turn it over now. Oh, one more thing. If you have questions for the speakers, please use the Q&A function and put your question in there. If you have any technical difficulties, put it in chat and they will try to figure out what the problem is if you're having trouble. So I hope that's all clear. And now we'll get started. I'll turn it over to Julie and Hazel. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, it's good to be here at Plymouth after our 2-year hiatus. First I wanted to start by saying that the idea for this book was from Patricia McDonald, who was the person who had and started Afton Press. And Julie had written books for her press before. And so she asked me, Patricia asked me if it would be if I would agree to having a book about my life. And I have to say that it was a tremendous privilege to have had this experience. And I'm glad, Joan, that you use the term collaboration, because I think with everything I've done in my life, it has been a total collaboration with someone or someplace. And so it was just a great privilege to have this time with Julie. And then to have such an incredible art historian look at your life and your work is something that is rare to happen to an artist. And so the other thing is that I'm at the stage of life, which is the 8th stage of life, where is the stage of review. So this was a tremendous, we met 30 plus times, or 30 plus interviews, and told stories and shared experience. And we had an adventure. We went to the Spirit Tree together. It was a process of dialogue, mainly, which is very important in my life and in my creativity. Dialogue, questions, searching, making something, the book, and actually having an adventure. So it's been a wonderful time of profound, actually, experience of looking at my life and my work, and having a totally new friend on a both intellectual and loving level. So with that, and I have tremendous gratitude for that, gratitude for how my life has been with my colleagues and my students and friends and my partners in life, always with a good dialogue. So I think it would be great now for Julie to talk about the book. Julie.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's going to see some of images of Hazel's wonderful work. Let me. We could talk about Hazel's work in so many different ways because she has made work in seemingly every medium with such a wide range of subject matter. But our topic this morning is how art can foster our spirituality. And the answer to that question is obvious when we look at art with a explicitly religious subject matter like Bellini's St. Francis in the Desert. But how about art where the subject is not overtly religious? Well, art can connect us more closely with nature through the vision of a particular artist. And Hazel is a very special artist. She's best known for her images of the legendary Little Spirit Tree. This famous tree is at Grand Portage Reservation on the north shore of Lake Superior. The tree is very old. It's been documented for over 400 years. It's regarded as a spirit power. Natives and voyagers brought gifts to the tree, tobacco, vermilion. They were seeking healing and protection during their perilous trips across Lake Superior. Now, the first white artist to paint the tree is Dewey Albinson. And in the 1920s, he named it the witch tree. He had heard old stories that an evil spirit lived there. And that name stuck in white culture until the 1990s, when it was replaced by a more accurate translation of the Ojibwe name. So I'll call it by the name as it was used at the time. Albinson made several paintings and drawings of the tree, and many other artists have drawn it and painted it as well. But no artist has dealt with the tree so extensively. Hazel has made over 400 drawings, paintings, and prints of the tree. This painting hangs at Plymouth Church. It's not like Dewey Albinson's painting. It's far more expressionist. Hazel has used color and form for their emotional meaning. The form is twisted and gnarled. The colors are heightened. And notice the vermilion red in the tree and the rust suggestive of the tobacco juice. The brushwork is very noticeable. It shows the hand of the painter. It gives us a sense of her energy, her urgency. It actually gives life to the surface and suggests the living bark. The size is important. It's 6 feet tall. It's the size of a tall person. Now contrast Albinson's painting, which was just 2 by 2.5 feet, a conventional easel painting. This one, however, is monumental. And even if the size of the painting were smaller, it would still be monumental because the tree almost fills the picture plane. So what does it mean as we look at it? It's dawn, the beginning of the day. It's not a birth because this is a mature tree. So let's say renewal, continued vitality. It may be the dawn after a storm, or in any case, it comes after darkness. So surely it tells us that there is hope. Now that's a lot. That is a lot of message and a lot of spiritual meaning. But as an art historian, I believe that we can get so much more from art if we know about the artist's life and work. An artist is reacting to his or her experience, her time, her place, her historical moment. So this painting is the culmination for a long evolution for Hazel. Hazel was born in Southern Ohio in 1934. She lived on a farm with an extended family, and her mother and grandmother were very important to her. She drew obsessively from an early age, had an internal necessity to draw. And I'm using a phrase of Vasily Kandinsky, an artist from whom Hazel has learned a lot. As she says, she understands the world through drawing. One of her magical places in childhood was the pond in the next field over from the house. It was surrounded by trees, gnarled roots growing down in the water. She would go there by herself in times of trouble. She had a collection of little tin boxes with treasures. She hid her treasures there and would arrange and rearrange them. As she said, it was my ritual. It was mystical. She loved the trees on the farm, a hackberry tree, a black walnut, and they had an orchard with fruit trees planted in a grid. The root of an artist's work, especially an expressionist, is childhood. Franz Klein, the abstract expressionist, told Hazel, "You never shake your original landscape." Hazel's first visit to the spirit tree was at age 25 in 1961. She was married to artist George Morrison, a member of the Ojibwe tribe. And she was a new mother. She saw the tree from above and looked down on it. She didn't go down to the tree that first time because she had a baby in her arms, and that was Briand. 2 years later, she did go down the path and over the rocks, where she stood in a cove surrounded by walls of rock. It felt like a cathedral to her. And she's taken many people to see it, including me. You're looking at a photograph of me and Marcia Cushmore and Hazel and Briand, now an adult, going down to see the tree. And Hazel has said that no one she's taken down there has ever failed to be moved by the sacredness of the space. It's meaningful to Hazel that the tree grows out of the earth, but has its roots in the water. I'm like that too, she said. An astrological counselor told her one time that as a Sagittarius, the perfect place for her is 1 foot on the land and 1 in the water. Hazel returned a couple of times in the 1960s to draw and paint the tree. Meanwhile, she was living in New York with George and summers in Provincetown. Abstraction had dominated the art scene in the 1950s, but it was beginning to give way to pop art, junk art, earthworks, a slew of new avant-garde movements. And Hazel learned from all of it, but she went her own way, taking her own work back to the beginning. She did a lot of cell paintings, just struggling to capture structure, not appearance. By then, art for Belvo was a process of transformation. She was influenced by her friend and mentor, Louise Nevelson, who is known for her box-like sculptures that also explore structure and have deep personal meaning. Hazel's 10 years on the East Coast were an intensive education. She was a participant in all aspects of avant-garde culture, art, music, especially jazz, and poetry. She attended the New School of Social Research. She had a Bunting Fellowship at Radcliffe College. A pivotal event in the next decade was the death of her son, Joe, from leukemia in 1972. During his final illness, Hazel drew obsessively. Sitting by his bedside, she made small, precise drawings in silver point pencil with touches of gold and watercolor. These drawings are very delicate with low contrast. They came from her unconscious, and they were a way for her to endure and to understand. And all these drawings were about seeds, generation, and growth. They were exhibited in a grid, and that grid shows how life continues, how it regenerates, how it exists in a cycle. Hazel had trouble using color for several years. She does a series of large-scale white paintings with colors so muted and faint that they're hard to photograph, but the forms can be discerned if the viewer stands close and looks attentively and meditates. The surfaces are really beautiful, made up of countless delicate brushstrokes. Also in 1974, she exhibited an installation called Roots and Seeds, made of glass, strings, seeds, and water. And there's a poem in pencil that was written on the wall of the Warm Gallery. It starts, "You plant a seed and it grows." There's a stanza about her grandfather, one about her grandmother, one about her mother, whom she calls a butcher and a lady. Mother worked as a butcher. And it concludes this way: "My son had the soul of a poet, the gift of music and the wisdom of an old man. He gave me the truth of love. These are my roots and seeds. Sometimes they bleed." Hazel had begun teaching in Rhode Island. She and George moved to Minnesota in 1970, and George began teaching at the University of Minnesota in the new Indian Studies Department. And Hazel began teaching at St. Paul Academy in late 1972 and later earned a master's degree at the University of Minnesota in design. She wrote a thesis on how to teach a course called Visual Presentation. The written portion included the diary of her first year of teaching at Lincoln School. It also included a meditation on the witch tree, which consisted of 10 very large drawings, 60 by 40 inches, 5 feet high, very different from the white paintings, tactile, sensual, and physical. They came from a new place of power. Part of the written portion also was meditation on the witch tree, consisting of 7 parts listed here. The thesis specifically connected the tree to the human figure. Hazel suggested in her thesis that the content of her drawings was like Rembrandt's self-portraits, a study of time, of aging, and of the life process. In these drawings, Hazel mainly drew the parts of the tree, especially the crown, analogous to the head, and the torso, analogous to, of course, the human torso. The twist of the trunk is exaggerated to intensify the dynamic power. The materials in the process help convey meaning too. She used heavy rag paper with rough texture, pencils ranging from dark to light, also tobacco juice, and vermilion pencil. Notice the strong marks and contrast. Her thesis said, "Your stroke bends the picture plane. It can be equated to carving out the shape. With the stroke, you shape the surface. Students should learn to think of building or carving with their stroke. Her thesis exhibition was at the Warm Gallery in 1981. By this time, Hazel was deeply involved with the feminist movement. WARM, or the Women's Art Registry of Minnesota, was one of the first women's cooperative galleries in the United States. It supported women artists. It gave them opportunities to exhibit. This thesis exhibition was very complex. It consisted of 3 self-portraits, 10 very accurate plant drawings of life-sized leaves. These plants were from the roots and seeds that she had exhibited in the installation in 1974. And drawings and photos showing the journey to the tree. And the journey to the tree, down the path and to the tree, was connected to a pilgrimage, to a spiritual journey. Another turning point for Hazel was in 1984-85, when she took a year off teaching to take care of George, who had severe health problems. This gave her the opportunity to paint the tree more often, and she got a new sense of how it's affected by the times of day, by the weather, and the seasons. In a 1985 exhibition, she showed 25 little paintings of the tree that pay tribute to other artists, adopting different styles, also showing the tree at different times of day and in the seasons, paying tribute to Native culture, the 4 elements, the signs of the zodiac. Also, at that 1985 exhibition is a painting you will recognize with its pair. This is Dawn 1 and Dawn 2. These are 6 feet tall, even larger than the thesis drawings. Hazel said Dawn 1's masculine in feeling and structure. That painting, sadly, is now lost. Dawn 2, more feminine in feeling and structure. Now, I want to read from the torso, part of her meditation on the witch tree. The body or stem of the spirit tree twists, voluptuous, old. She knows generations of wisdom. What has happened here? I see a body gestating, for the essential process of life is gestation. And Hazel did other pairs as well, sunrise and high noon. In 1994, she presented Meditation on the Spirit Tree, 50 New Works in Grand Marais, the Johnson Heritage Post Art Gallery. This had new tobacco juice drawings and another pair, Dusk 1 and Dusk 2. Why did Hazel keep painting the spirit tree again and again? In the late 90s, she said, someone recently asked how I could spend 30 years drawing the same thing. I learned about obsession from my grandmother, who was a farmer and a quilter. I watched her every day through her chores of feeding, gardening, hoeing, canning, cooking, washing, and sewing to get to her quilting. Whatever she was doing, she always had in her hand the quilt block, about 12 inches square. But while she was piecing them, they took on various interesting shapes. It was then that the grand image emerged. Not only did growing up with these prominent geometric organic patterns inform my eyes, but I saw what work and obsession is. Hazel has also related the 7 aspects of her meditation on the spirit tree to Hindu ideas. The meditation is a metaphor for the body, she wrote. The 7 energy points, meaning the tree, are parallel to the 7 Hindu chakra points. And she went on to relate individual energy to universal energy, individual harmony and healing to universal healing. This idea of a universal energy emerged for Hazel once again in 1996 in her drawings of the Victory of Samothrace at the Louvre. It's at the top of a grand staircase, and with its base, the Victory is 18 feet tall. On the flight home, Hazel was leafing through her notebook, and she thought for a minute that she was looking at a drawing of the spirit tree. And she became fascinated by the kinship between the spirit tree and the Victory. Like the spirit tree, the Victory is seen as spiritual and uplifting, also a symbol of survival since it's been broken and put back together. Between 2010 and 2014, Hazel did a series of 10 paintings of the tree. They were all called spirit tree, but given specific names like the Matriarch, the Prophet, the Sage, the Guardian. Here are 8 of the 10. All these names are personages. They're portraits. Notice that they are vertical, like most portraits. All are the same size, 5.5 by 4 feet, and in greatly different colors. So they express different moods and really different ideas. One critic walking into an exhibition of these paintings compared it to a shrine. The titles are often associated with feminine archetypes, and they're metaphors for life, growth, maturity, wisdom, and endurance. And we get a sense from these trees that we can survive and become wise, no matter what we have to endure. The Matriarch is Hazel's favorite, and she is a matriarch in several senses. She is a very wise woman, a mothering figure who nurtures family, friends, and students. And she has challenged patriarchal ideas about art and society for many years. Motherhood has been central to her life. Her sons, Joe, Danny, and Breon, were always interwoven with her work. She cherishes connection and is part of a line of strong, hardworking women. Her partner of 35 years is Marcia Cushmore, a philosophy professor and administrator before retirement, and now an artist and a member of Plymouth Church. But you can respond to this image with your own interpretations. Some see it as a tree of knowledge or the tree of life from the Bible, a symbol of the ravages of time, the divine presence in nature, or an ancient female symbol of the earth's fecundity and continual renewal. And Hazel has said the most profound symbol of the tree is the crucifixion. Hazel's most recent series of trees is based on a honey locust that stood for many years behind the Metropolitan Museum of Art, unfortunately now cut down. She had painted it a couple of times, but then she was inspired by the Overstory, the well-known novel by Richard Powers, published in 2019, to create a series of 18 paintings, to create a forest. And this is my own photograph of these works in progress in Hazel's studio. And I'll conclude by reading a few lines from the end of the book. The Honey Locust series takes Hazel all the way back to her beginnings. The trees surrounding the pond, her personal treasures, the farm. She has been reminded as she works on this series of the Manifesto in 21 Days and other early works by the similarities of structure, the central form with extensions of tendrils and threads. As with all the work that has gone before, she must make the forest. It's a matter of internal necessity. The paintings are the result of the wonder and awe she has always felt before nature, the source of her spirituality and creative power. I'd like to ask if there are any questions now.
Julie, I see one question here. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Kyle wants to know regarding Don 1, how can a painting that large be lost?
Well, I think what has probably happened is somebody likes it and has claimed it and is hopefully living with it. But we don't know where it is.
Now, I can't hear you, Hazel, too well.
Let's move this.
Say it again.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, good.
Oh, well, I was saying that I don't know, it is lost. We don't know where it is, but hopefully someone has claimed it from the corporation who owned it and is now living with it and enjoying it and appreciating it. I hope that's true. I would like to find it because it would be so wonderful to put it together with the other piece that's here at Plymouth Church. See them together.
Wouldn't that be nice? Yeah, be wonderful. Let's see. I'm encouraging people to put questions in the Q&A. Oh man, where did I go? I'm having trouble about the questions now. If anybody else can help me here, I would appreciate it. Where did I go?
If there aren't any, while we're waiting for questions, one thing I could tell everyone is that I'm very interested in how artists have lived through the centuries. And with that curiosity, Marcia and I have traveled around the world and we visited a lot of artist studios. And it just fascinates me how artists live. I mean, I've been to the studio of Cezanne, Rembrandt, Monet, Barbara Hepworth, and
your sound seems to be directional. I don't know if you can be as close to the mic as possible. I'm losing. Okay.
Well, I was saying that we visited studios all around the world, and it fascinates me how artists have lived and worked, and especially ones who are artistic ancestors, which is always something that I've asked students to consider in terms of art history, as who has influenced them. I once had a professor who said, if you like an artist, look to the artist they liked or studied. Mm-hmm. So
here's another. Oh yeah, go on.
I was just going to say we went to Joan Mitchell's studio in France and Monet and Louise Nevelson's studio in Maine and her home place. And anyway, it's a great adventure to approach life that way.
Yeah, yeah, that's wonderful. Another question Kyle has regarding using tobacco, how many applications do you usually use?
Well, it depends on a lot of things, how strong. I soak the tobacco, and the tobacco juice drawings, like the one at Plymouth Church. There's one from the 1994 series hanging in the Plymouth Church collection. I soak the tobacco in water and make a juice, and then I apply it to a watercolor paper. It's 200.
I'm losing you again.
I'm pretty close. It's a very heavy 230-pound weight paper, and then I apply it as a watercolor, and it takes as many coats as to however many coats it takes to make the value that I want. That's how many coats it has to be. So you just keep painting until you get the right values, because it isn't a one value. All of the tobacco, vermilion, graphite, and charcoal drawings have many layers of a lot of media. So for those of you who come to Plymouth Church, you can look at the drawing and see that. Note that underneath the surface image, there are many, many layers of media, beginning with tobacco juice.
Interesting. Jackie asks, she's referring to the last photo. I'm not sure which one she is referring to. Makes me ask if you work on more than one painting at a time.
Yes, in both our studios. Marcia and I have a studio in Golden Valley, and we have one on Lake Superior. And we have painting walls. And my wall in both studios will receive 3 large canvases so that I can start, I bring them along all at the same time, because what it does is enables you to keep working, have a steady flow, because when you get stuck on one, stopped, and you have to think about it, you can work on another. So I go back and forth working usually on 3, but my wall is large enough. I have done 12-foot paintings on the wall. So yes, I do. I work on a lot of things at one time. In the studio, I have a zone for drawing, a zone for etching, and a zone for painting. 2 zones for 2 kinds of painting.
Wow. Oh boy, complicated. Jim asks, is the witch tree that you have immortalized still immortal?
I don't know.
The mic too.
Yes, yeah. Well, I don't know. I have heard, it isn't an indigenous cedar to the North Shore. It's actually a cedar tree that's indigenous to Washington, Oregon, in this country. So I once was down there working, and 3 people came down the path, and I just sat over in my quiet place and listened to them talk. And one was a professor from Georgia who had made a trip to see the tree. And his comment to his friends that were with him was that a tree that kind of cedar tree has a lifetime of about 500 years. So I don't know, but I can't think about that. I can't think about that.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. Anne asks, Hazel, share with us more about how your feminist views life have influenced your work and the spiritual nature of your work. I have so appreciated the work you do and how you live your life. From Ann Manning.
Well, I think the most basic philosophy of feminism is that everything is connected, that life is a whole. It's not segregated into pieces. So you live your life all the time with everything that you that your spirit needs, and so that includes, for me, mothering, teaching, cooking, traveling, and all the time drawing all the time, and it keeps me centered and solid. Like through the quarantine, the 2 years we've been quarantined and our sort of isolation, painting is what kept me solid. And Marcia and I did a project that we came up with called Juxtaposition, where I did observational painting in a classical way to keep my sanity. And then she took my painting and palette and deconstructed the image into an abstraction. So the final piece is 2 paintings and in juxtaposition to each other. So I think that's a very feminist idea too. Sharing is a feminist way of life. I think we're fortunate. I felt fortunate to be able to fulfill my spirit and my spiritual needs by living the life that I needed and wanted. And I'm grateful for that, for all the people who have supported me.
Yes, that's wonderful. Wonderful. Well, I believe, let me check once more here. I think those are all of our questions, and it's about time for us to be wrapping up. So I want to thank both of you. As John Humphrey would say, imagine much applause if we were there with you. It was just lovely to hear about everything, your book and your life experiences. Thank you so much. I need to tell everybody, next week we have no forum because it's Thanksgiving weekend. On December 5th, the Plymouth Christmas Offering beneficiaries will be represented, and they're all in-house at Plymouth. Families Moving Forward, Plymouth's Drop-In Center, and the Groveland Food Shelf. It's the offering that we take at Christmas and where that money is going to go, and it's going to be divided among these 3. David Enghusen, Larry Johnson, and E.J. Kelly will be there to talk for each of their efforts. So happy Thanksgiving, everyone, and we hope to see you on December 5th. And thanks again so much, Julie and Hazel.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye, everyone.